On New Year's Eve, while watching the fireworks live, I saw my fiancé Brecken passionately kissing another woman. And yet his text message arrived on time. "Happy New Year, Hazel. Tomorrow you'll be my wife. How wonderful." At the same time, a strange number sent me explicit photos with the caption, "Your boyfriend has a lot of stamina." I watched silently, tearing up the wedding photos I had prepared. Brecken, we're over. 1. My fiancé Brecken was passionately kissing another woman during the New Year's Eve fireworks show live stream, and his greeting message was sent to my phone right on time. "Hazel, Happy New Year. You're going to marry me tomorrow, it's great." At the same time, an unfamiliar number sent me explicit photos. "Your boyfriend has great stamina, he's hard again after just finishing." I watched silently and tore up the marriage certificate photo I had prepared. Brecken, we have no tomorrow. The New Year's Eve fireworks show was always grand, and even in the residential area, you could hear the lively noise. But I was staring fixedly at the couple kissing passionately on the big screen. That was my fiancé who was going to marry me after the new year. But at this moment, he was holding the woman in his arms as if she were a treasure, kissing her passionately. That greeting message, which was set to be sent to my phone, was like a silent mockery to me. The friend requests that popped up in the chat interface made me feel cold all over. The room was eerily quiet, and I could only hear my own heart beating wildly. The next second, I picked up the red-bottomed ID photo that I had taken with Brecken a few days ago and tore it to pieces. There was a stinging coldness on my cheek, and I subconsciously reached out, only to touch a piece of cold wetness. I forced a bitter smile and slumped onto the sofa. Brecken and I were each other's first love. When we graduated from high school, he confessed to me at a fireworks show like this. It was so good back then. The pretended composure on the young man's face couldn't hide his flushed ears. At that time, Brecken's eyes were full of me. Even his hands holding the flowers were trembling slightly. "Hazel, will you be with me?" Looking at him like that, my heart had already turned into a puddle of water, and I vaguely agreed to him without knowing how. The only vague memory I had was of him excitedly spinning me around. In the following 7 years, I became the object of everyone's envy. Brecken's company and Hazel's company were business partners, and our love was naturally welcomed by everyone, and even our parents were very happy about it. And Brecken was also very good to me. He took care of all aspects of my life. From my menstrual period to anniversaries, he did everything himself. Even when I was in a car accident, his first instinct was to protect me. He sat in a wheelchair for 3 months because of a fracture, while I only had a small scratch on my body. Even my parents said with a smile that Brecken really treated me like a fairy in the sky. He was covered in injuries at that time, but he still didn't forget to comfort me as I cried. "Hazel is the moon in the sky. If I don't cherish her, won't someone else take her away?" Yes, he obviously loved me so much. How could he suddenly change his mind? I sat there numbly all night until Brecken pushed open the door of the villa and held me in his arms, and I finally came back to my senses. I turned my head, avoiding the kiss he landed on me, and asked in a thick voice, "Where have you been?" He was stunned, his eyes subconsciously avoiding my questioning. "The company was too busy yesterday. You know, Hazel, that recent project is really important. If I can get it, I can support you better." He coaxed me as usual, completely unaware of anything unusual. But the strong, unfamiliar scent of perfume on him deeply stimulated my almost broken nerves. I closed my eyes and glanced at the lipstick mark on the collar of his tie, forcing back all my grievances and said, "My ID has expired, so let's get married later, okay?" Actually, I wasn't good at lying, and Brecken always said that when I lied, it was like throwing myself into a trap, and he would know everything as soon as I opened my mouth. But Brecken at this moment just nodded, as if he hadn't noticed anything unusual about me. A trace of imperceptible joy flashed across his eyes. He stood up and yawned sleepily, saying he was going to rest. I nodded stiffly, my heart sinking into the icy sea. The phone rang again with a message notification. I closed my eyes and tremblingly accepted the friend request sent by that person. Almost instantly, dozens of explicit and crazy photos came into view, in which Brecken looked obsessed, his arms tightly around the slender waist of the woman beside him. Brecken was always gentle with me. Even in bed, he was restrained and reserved. I had never seen him so crazy and unrestrained. And the half-hidden face of the woman in the photo, I recognized her. It was Brecken's assistant, Iona. "Are you free? Let's meet." After a long while, I looked at the sudden message and hesitated to accept the invitation. Okay. 2. Miss Hazel is kind enough to come to the appointment, so you must know what's on your mind. Iona in the private room had red lips and curly hair, smiling seductively. The neckline of her dress was cut very low, revealing countless traces of lovemaking, completely different from her usual capable appearance. "What do you want?" I awkwardly averted my gaze, a dull ache in my heart. Iona put down the coffee she hadn't touched and admired my tense expression for a while before speaking slowly. "Miss Hazel, I'm pregnant." She didn't notice my sudden pale face, but gently and slowly touched her small belly, her eyes filled with maternal tenderness. My long, slender nails dug deep into the flesh of my palm, but I didn't feel the pain at all. My heart ached so much that I was almost suffocating. My breathing was unusually heavy, but she seemed completely unaware of it and continued. "I just found out the day before yesterday, Miss Hazel. I hope you can take the initiative to break up with Brecken. I don't want the child to be born without a father. Besides, Brecken doesn't really love you either. He always complains to me about your spoiled brat attitude, saying that you're so old, but still can't take care of yourself. He likes capable women like me, not a giant baby. So that's how Brecken described me to others. Spoiled brat, giant baby, incapable." I forced a bitter smile, looking at Iona, who was so relaxed and confident in front of me, and I was momentarily dazed. Once upon a time, I was extremely intelligent and capable. I had always been at the top of my class, and had helped my parents negotiate projects independently at the age of 15. These achievements of mine had once caused my brother to be scolded by my parents, who said that he was not as good as his younger sister. Originally, I was the heir my parents favored, but I truly deeply loved Brecken, so I voluntarily gave up my inheritance rights to be with him. But unexpectedly, in his eyes, I was such a worthless person. He even used me as a topic of conversation with his lover. Unable to suppress my emotions, I stood up abruptly and stumbled out of the private room. I wandered aimlessly through the bustling crowd, like a weak wandering spirit. It was almost New Year's Eve, and the shops on the street were busier than usual. Couples held hands and smiled as they dated and played. I walked numbly, each step like walking on a knife's edge, pain making me want to cry. I had walked down this old street countless times with Brecken. The sweet memories of our past dates were vivid, but it seemed like just a beautiful dream of mine. I remembered when we first got together, Brecken mysteriously brought me to a small temple at the end of this old street and said he wanted to draw lots to see our future. The old monk just smiled kindly and said that we were destined to be together. Now that I think about it, the old monk only said that we were destined to be together, which implied that we were destined to be apart. The ups and downs of my emotions caused a sharp pain in my lower abdomen. My face turned pale, and I could only sit on the side of the street to rest. A kind girl passing by gave me brown sugar and tissues. Looking at the bustling street as usual, I silently shed a few tears. Year after year, the flowers are similar, but the people are different year after year. It wasn't until the sky was dark and the neon lights lit up the street that I slowly stood up and prepared to go back to my parents' house. My phone was full of missed calls, and I was a little confused. Another call from Brecken came in, and although I was a little resistant, I still answered the phone. "Hazel, why haven't you answered your phone all afternoon? What have you done? Iona is about to miscarry because of you. Come to the hospital right now and apologize to Iona." I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, the call was hung up. The harsh sound made my eardrums ache, and I trembled uncontrollably. After a long time, I finally came to my senses and took a taxi to the hospital. 3. In the hospital ward, Brecken's expression was gentle as he chatted with Iona, who lay in bed. The peaceful atmosphere was shattered by my arrival. Fear flashed across Iona's face as she quickly shut her mouth. If I didn't know I hadn't done anything wrong, I might even have suspected that she had been framed. Brecken's face darkened with my arrival. He stood up, his tall figure looming over me as he approached. Hazel, you shouldn't be so hard on Iona. He frowned, his eyes filled with displeasure. Iona is my right-hand woman, a backbone of the company. We can't do without her for the recent project. She's pregnant and still working hard. How can you force her to leave the company? Even if you have some grievances against her, why would you treat her this way? Do you know how fragile a pregnant woman's life is? What if something happens to the baby? So Brecken cared so much about Iona and their child. So much so that he had lost all reason and allowed Iona to frame me. A bitter smile played on my lips as I looked up at the man I had loved for 7 years. 7 years, a whole 7 years. Even if we weren't married, he was already my family. Even if he belittled my abilities and mocked my personality, I never thought he would condemn me without any evidence. Swallowing the lump in my throat, I turned my head away and forced out the words. I haven't made things difficult for her, and I haven't asked her to leave the company. Before I could finish, Iona interrupted me with a pitiful voice. Miss Hazel, I didn't mean to deliberately drive a wedge between you and President Brecken. It's just that my body is really weak, and I've been busy with company matters recently, and the baby isn't very stable. After this project is finished, I'll submit my resignation. I won't disturb you and President Brecken. She spoke with extreme grievance. Her pale, unadorned face was filled with voiture and sadness, completely different from the arrogant and fearless look she had just a few hours ago. Iona, you're such a good actress. Why don't you consider joining the entertainment industry? It's hard for you to be so good at stirring up trouble and turning black into white. I looked coldly at the woman who was pretending to be weak, and a wave of annoyance surged through me. You say whatever you want. I'm the one who's not kind. I'm the one who's stirring up trouble, okay? She suddenly burst into tears, curling up into a ball as if she had been wronged. Hazel, are you done causing trouble? Brecken frowned, grabbed my wrist tightly and scolded me loudly. The company has been very busy recently, and I don't have time to waste with a big missy like you. Can you stop giving me trouble? Busy with company matters? I felt a chill run down my spine and sneered at him. Are you busy with work or something else? You know better than I do. A flicker of guilt flashed across Brecken's eyes, but almost instantly he reacted, his impatience growing more intense, and his gaze towards me was full of irritation. Iona, who was lying on the bed, still had tears on her face, but her eyes were full of arrogance and contempt, silently challenging me. I told you, apologize quickly. Brecken was so angry that he grabbed my wrist so hard that he pushed me directly to the floor in front of the bed. My knees slammed hard against the hard ground, and the delicate skin of my wrist was scraped. Enduring all the grievances in my heart, I slowly stood up, and then slapped Brecken across the face. Ah, Hazel, President Brecken is so good to you. How can you hit someone? That's too much. Slap. Another slap. I looked coldly at Brecken, who was stunned, and at Iona, who was scared out of her wits. With a cold face, I rubbed my wrist. I don't hit pregnant women. This slap is for you, Iona. I raised my head, looked at Brecken's shocked expression and sneered. Brecken, let's break up. 4. After a long period of silence, I no longer wanted to waste any more time with this pair of cheating lovers. I turned to leave, but Brecken grabbed my arm. Hazel, don't go too far. He glared at me, his face contorted in a way I'd never seen before. I yanked my arm away and sneered. What, can't keep up the act anymore? A flicker of panic crossed his eyes as he took a hesitant step back. But then, as if he'd thought of something, he looked at me mockingly. How many times have you brought up breaking up over the years? And every time you come crawling back. I advise you not to make a scene, or you'll only end up embarrassing yourself. Before he could finish, I had already turned and walked out of the hospital room. Don't worry, President Brecken, I said. This time, I won't be coming back. Dragging my weary body back to my parents' villa, I saw my parents, sleepy-eyed, getting out of bed to greet me. Overwhelmed by my emotions, I couldn't hold back my tears and burst into tears in their arms. I don't want to marry that bastard Brecken anymore. I want to break up with him. My voice was muffled by tears as I repeated the words over and over. My mother was so heartbroken she was on the verge of tears herself, and my father looked equally distressed. He immediately called my brother to come back home. When my brother arrived, his face lined with weariness. I had just woken up. Probably because I was too tired and upset. I had cried myself to sleep last night. Now my eyes were swollen like walnuts as I sat dazed at the dining table. What happened? Did that bastard Brecken bully you? Just you wait. I'll go kill him right now. I'll spell my name backwards if I don't. My brother was so furious that his hair stood on end. My mom glared at him before he calmed down. He sat down at the dining table, angrily taking a bite of bread. The reason I called you back is because of your sister. I remember you signed a contract with Brecken's company a while ago, didn't you? My brother scratched his head and thought for a long time before recalling the incident. He slapped his forehead and went upstairs to talk to Dad, leaving me and Mom sitting at the dining table, looking at each other. My phone was ringing nonstop, and I jumped in surprise. I quickly answered the call from my best friend, Juniper. Hazel, you have to see the message I sent you. Did you have a fight with Brecken last night? Someone posted photos online, and now the whole circle knows about it. I hung up the phone in confusion and quickly skimmed through the document she had sent me. The photos were clearly taken secretly, and the fabricated text was extremely slanderous, almost directly accusing me of being an arrogant and unreasonable spoiled brat who intentionally made things difficult for others. I frowned, my mind racing. For such rumors to spread so quickly within a dozen hours, it was clearly no coincidence. Someone must have been behind it, and even the paparazzi who took the photos must have been hired in advance. Although there was a way to suppress these rumors, if I acted now, it would only invite more malicious speculation. As I was deep in thought, Iona's chat window popped up. I clicked on the message, and the newly sent message was striking and sarcastic. This is my breakup gift to you. How do you like it? Are you happy? You've been hogging Brecken for so many years, making us have to sneak around. This is the karma you deserve. Soon I'll be marrying Brecken, and you'll always be just my underling. Crazy. I cursed under my breath and blocked and deleted her account. But before I could recover, the villa's front door was knocked on. The nanny took one look and walked over to me, looking troubled. Miss, it's Mr. Brecken. Should we see him? My mother asked softly. After I nodded, she stood up and walked towards the second floor. Brecken looked calm, and he even smiled when he saw me. Hazel, don't be angry with me anymore. Yesterday was my fault. I was too impatient, and I also blame myself for not spending enough time with you lately. Let's get married soon, and after the project is finished, I'll take you on a honeymoon. Don't be angry anymore, okay? It's bad for your health if you're angry. I'll feel sorry for you. He reached out to hold my hand, as if he were still the Brecken who had always doted on me. 5. There's only you and Brecken in the empty living room. I looked at the gentle expression on his face, but all I felt was disgust. You and Iona, you're a perfect match. I avoided his arm that was about to touch me and stood up straight. Brecken's face froze instantly. He looked at me incredulously, and after a long time squeezed out a question from between his teeth. When did you find out? I thought I was pretty dashing, but hearing him admit it, my heart still ached uncontrollably. When did I find out? Does it matter? I asked him back, my eyes filled with an undisguised disgust. Get out, I don't want to see you anymore. Just as I was about to get up, I saw him sneer and raised his hand to stop the butler, who was about to come forward to see me off. Hazel, don't be so arrogant. I'm here to talk to you about our business, Atticus. Although my brother was indignant for me, his face was as black as Bao Gong's reincarnation, but he was still a dedicated president and patiently listened to his words. It's a pity. From the beginning, Brecken never intended to be sincere with us. There was a loophole in that contract, and if we wanted to fill that loophole, the amount was astronomical. Even my father, who was used to the ups and downs of the financial market, couldn't help but frown. You're scheming against us? My brother's eyes were red with anger, He looked at the contract incredulously, his fingers trembling slightly. What scheming that's too harsh. Brecken smiled and rubbed his ears like a cunning fox. Originally, you still had a chance. After all, Hazel and I have been together for so many years. If she had been sensible, you wouldn't have. It's a pity, I gave her many chances. Brecken completely tore off his disguise, revealing his cunning face. My family was so angry that they trembled, but they could only watch helplessly as he walked out of the door step by step. You have 1 more month. Enjoy this last bit of wealth. The harsh sound of the door slamming stimulated everyone's nerves. My brother sat on the sofa, holding his head in frustration, and my mother, with a worried look on her face, didn't forget to feed my father, who had heart disease, a pill. This bastard. My brother cursed angrily, full of regret. It's all my fault. If only I had been more careful. How could this be his fault? If I hadn't been with Brecken so early, my brother wouldn't have regarded him as family and wouldn't have been so easily deceived. My heart was filled with an overwhelming sense of apology, and I felt sick and nauseous. My whole body started to feel uncomfortable. It's okay, brother. I'll find a way. The next second, I was about to get up but fell to my knees in a panic. With my family calling out to me anxiously, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. My mother, with a worried look on her face, was sitting by the bed. When she saw me wake up, her eyes turned red instantly, and she held my cold hand and cried, "Hazel, my poor daughter. How could you get pregnant?" For a moment, I was almost stiff on the bed, incredulously reaching out to touch my still flat belly. Is there already a child in my body? Tears fell drop by drop on the back of my hand. I was full of confusion, not knowing what to do. To be diagnosed with pregnancy at this time. What should I do? But looking at my mother, whose hair had turned white overnight and seemed 10 years older, I still gritted my teeth and sat up, wiping away the tears on my face forcefully. My parents are both old, and the family can only rely on me and my brother. Now, even if there are thousands of difficulties and obstacles, I have to swallow my tears and solve the company's problem first. I quickly sorted out the contacts and relationships I had accumulated over the years in my mind, trying to find the best way to solve the problem. But people's nature is to avoid harm. Almost all the friends who could help had been deliberately warned, and Brecken had been planning this for a long time and was determined not to let us have a good time. I racked my brains for a whole day, but no one was willing to lend a helping hand. Even the law firm that specialized in this area said that the matter was extremely difficult. Until I heard the news that Zephyr had returned to China, I sent him a message out of luck, and unexpectedly, he actually agreed to take on this case. Zephyr was my former classmate, and after graduation, he went abroad to study law with a full scholarship and solve several major cases abroad. I have full confidence in his ability. Now that he has just returned to China, he came to the hospital to understand the situation with me as soon as he heard the news. Hazel, long time no see. 6. In the following days, I threw myself into the company's affairs. Fortunately, I was not far along in my pregnancy, and the symptoms of morning sickness were mild. But even so, I fell ill several times due to intense mental work. During a routine checkup, I happened to see a familiar yet unfamiliar face in the gynecology department. It was Iona. In just a month, she had lost a lot of weight and looked much more haggard. She saw me too, and for a moment, hostility flashed in her originally tired eyes. I didn't want to get entangled with her, but unexpectedly, she came to find me. "Hazel, you bitch." She blocked my way, her face full of hideous hatred. "What kind of tricks did you play? Now Brecken is getting colder and colder towards me. Is it all because of you, this shameless woman?" Her gaze suddenly fell on me, and when she saw my slightly protruding belly, she was stunned in place. No wonder. No wonder Brecken doesn't want to marry me. Iona's steps were unsteady, and she almost fell to the ground, but she still stared at me hatefully, her mouth full of foul language. Her abnormal behavior quickly attracted the attention of the medical staff, and after being taken to the ward by several nurses to relieve her emotions, I was left alone. standing there dumbfounded. Brecken valued her and her child so much that he was even willing to cheat to be with her. Now that I was no longer an obstacle, they should have been together long ago. But looking at Iona's appearance, I shook my head, forcing myself to throw a trace of doubt in the back of my mind. Now is not the time to worry about other things. But my luck was really bad today. As soon as I left the hospital, I ran into the person I least wanted to see in my life. I looked silently at Brecken in front of me and sighed deeply. "You're so down and out after leaving me." He raised an eyebrow and looked me up and down lightly. I had been busy running around these days, and my clothes were naturally whatever was convenient. Compared to before, I did look a lot more down and out. I didn't bother to pay attention to him, and wanted to quickly find Zephyr to verify, but he stopped me with a raised hand. "Brecken, your girlfriend is still in the hospital." I sighed helplessly again, and sarcastically said, "Do you still have time to bother me here? Why don't you go and see how your beloved Miss Iona is doing?" A trace of inexplicable impatience flashed in Brecken's eyes, and he was about to say something, but he saw the examination report in my hand and my slightly bulging belly. "You're pregnant?" His eyes suddenly turned sharp, and his rough hand instinctively wanted to touch my belly. "Whose child is this? Speak." "Hazel, tell me the truth. I'm still willing to give you a chance, and I won't make things difficult for your Hazel family." He almost roared, and my heart skipped a beat, and a surge of anger and resentment welled up in my heart. "What does it have to do with you, Brecken? It doesn't matter whose it is." Before I could finish speaking, Brecken's face darkened again. He gritted his teeth and said "good" several times in a row, and was about to carry me back to the hospital. "What are you trying to do?" He sneered and simply dropped 2 words. "Abortion." This madman. I cursed under my breath and struggled, but it was all in vain. "Hazel, why haven't you gone home yet? Your parents must be worried." In the midst of the struggle, a familiar voice came into my ears. I raised my head with difficulty and saw Zephyr rushing over, and I breathed a sigh of relief. "Hazel." Brecken put me down and narrowed his eyes at Zephyr, his face full of hostility. "Zephyr, why are you back in China? Lacking women recently, calling my ex-girlfriend so affectionately?" Zephyr ignored his nonsense and carefully checked my condition to make sure I was okay, and then carefully tidied my messy hair. "Hazel is my girlfriend, and President Brecken doesn't need to worry about her health." He stood beside me, his arm lightly around my shoulder, and he didn't even give Brecken a second glance. "Okay, Hazel, you're doing well." Brecken laughed angrily, looked at me and Zephyr walking away, and almost squeezed out a sarcastic remark from between his teeth. As I walked further and further away from Zephyr, neither of us noticed the crazy and paranoid look on his face. "Thank you for what happened just now." After a long silence, I mustered up the courage to thank him. Zephyr's fingers on the steering wheel tightened suddenly, but he quickly returned to his usual calm and composed manner. "It's okay, it's what I should do." 7. With these materials, our chances of winning are much greater. Leaning back in my chair, I finally dared to relax slightly after hearing Zephyr's words. My body still felt a bit unwell from time to time. I frowned, remembering what the doctor had said earlier. "Your body is ready for an abortion." I closed my eyes and made a decision. The abortion procedure was quick, but it was a major surgery after all, and my body was still weak. Because of this, I spent some time recuperating in the hospital. During this short period, I received countless abusive and cursing messages from different numbers every day. I didn't even need to use my connections to figure out who was doing it. Iona, Brecken's assistant. From her cursing messages, I managed to piece together her current situation. She had a miscarriage due to one of Brecken's drunken impulsive acts. After the miscarriage, she felt extremely insecure and needed to be with Brecken almost every moment. Brecken felt a little guilty towards her at first and coaxed her a few times, but he quickly lost patience and broke up with her abruptly, even dismissing her from the company. Now she could only live in a cheap rental house, and she couldn't even afford the medication after the miscarriage. Tisk. I pinched the bridge of my nose, which was tightly wrinkled, and sent a friend request to the account I had previously blocked. I have a secret about Brecken. Meet me at this address tomorrow afternoon at 5 p.m. Almost instantly, I received a message from Iona. As if thinking of something, she added, "Don't bring anyone." It was an abandoned building. After hesitating for a moment, I moved my finger and accepted the invitation. Even though Zephyr was worried about my safety, I was determined to go to the appointment. As long as there was a possibility of winning against Brecken, I had to seize it firmly. After all, the price of losing was too high, and I couldn't afford it. I arrived at the address on time, and Brecken's face, full of arrogant smiles, appeared in front of me. Surprise? He raised an eyebrow at me and stroked my cheek as he used to. And behind him, there was Iona, dressed in rags and unconscious. "I did a little investigation recently." He smiled brightly, carefully tidying up my messy collar, and gently patted my head. "It was this bitch who stirred up trouble and caused us to go our separate ways. So, I gave her a little punishment she deserved. And that child, our child, was also gone because of their provocation. It doesn't matter, we'll have another one." Brecken laughed happily, stepped on Iona's finger bones, and looked at me with bright eyes. "Hazel, I regret it. When I saw you with Zephyr, you have no idea how jealous I was. So Hazel, come back to me. I can let go of the loophole in that contract. I'm willing to let your Hazel family go, as long as you're willing to come back to me." Seeing that I was silent and didn't move, the smile on his face faded, and he shrugged helplessly, taking the tablet from the person beside him and placing it in front of me. The picture on the tablet was like real-time monitoring. I looked at the familiar scene and finally couldn't suppress the anxiety in my heart. "Brecken, are you crazy?" The live footage on the tablet was clearly of my old house where I had lived. My brother and Zephyr were tied to chairs, and my parents were surrounded by several strong men in the corner. I gritted my teeth tightly and suppressed the urge to slap him. "Hazel, come back to me, and we'll get married." The tablet screen was forcibly cut off, and Brecken kissed my trembling eyelids and whispered, "This way it's good for everyone." 8. Huh. The woman on the ground, covered in blood and flesh, suddenly sneered. She had somehow sat up, and her disfigured face was full of mockery. "Brecken, what you say is no different from farting." Brecken frowned and gestured to the bodyguards beside him to deal with her, but I grabbed his hand in time. "You mean, as long as I marry you, you'll give up on exploiting the loopholes in the contract to make the Hazel family pay compensation, and you won't deliberately make things difficult for my family anymore, right?" Brecken smiled arrogantly, looking at me as if I were a pet he had raised. After thinking for a moment, he nodded reluctantly. "Yes, I just want you to be happy. You're 1,000 times more important than those things." He pulled me into his arms and said sweet nothings that made no sense. The skin he touched sent shivers down my spine. I took a deep breath and said softly, "No. WH. What?" He was stunned for a moment, but the next second, countless armed police officers poured in from all directions and surrounded the entire abandoned building. "Don't move." He narrowed his eyes slightly, looked at the scene in front of him, and smiled coldly at me. "You planned to call the police from the beginning, didn't you? Aren't you worried about your family at all?" Iona and I had already retreated to a safe place under the protection of the police. Looking at Brecken's gloomy expression, I said loudly, "I would rather believe the police than believe a person who will stop at nothing. Even if I could save my family today, wouldn't you have let them go?" My brother was almost seriously injured in a car accident. My father's room was filled with flowers he was allergic to, and my mother was threatened several times. "Brecken, it's you who didn't give my family a way to live. So don't blame others for your downfall." Everything went smoothly after that. With the recordings and Iona's evidence, the Hazel family was cleared of suspicion. It was just that Atticus was miserable. He was chased and beaten by our parents for several days, and now his butt was so swollen that he couldn't sit down. Brecken was arrested and imprisoned, and Zephyr incidentally submitted all the collected information to the relevant authorities. This information was enough to sentence Brecken to life imprisonment. I was surprised that he had found so much information, but he just mumbled and wouldn't tell the truth. Later, I found out that he had collected all this information before he returned to China, and he would send Brecken to prison if he couldn't win this lawsuit. That's right, he was chasing me. After Brecken was arrested, he confessed his love to me for the first time. But I think I probably won't be in a relationship for a while. He just smiled and said it was okay, he would wait for me. Iona received the huge reward I promised her. She had spent a lot of money to bring Brecken down. And after taking the money, she flew abroad to continue her studies. After all, they were all victims, why bother each other? As for Brecken, his crimes were too complex, and it took a long time before he was formally sentenced. The death penalty. At that time, I was coaxing the cat that Zephyr had sent me, and when I heard the news, I just paused for a moment. Before he died, he didn't want to see his parents, but he specifically asked to see me. I thought about it for a long time, and finally went. After knowing each other for more than 20 years, I should see him for the last time. Even though he had been locked up for so long, he hadn't changed at all, and he still loved to joke and tease me. He talked for a long time, but I never responded to him like I used to. Time was running out. I lowered my eyes, and a strange swelling surged in my heart. I loved him, and I hated him. At this moment, I didn't know whether I should cry or laugh. But he told me not to cry for him. Brecken subconsciously reached out to wipe away my tears. But in the end, he could only put it down helplessly and awkwardly. He repeated, "Don't cry for me, Hazel, I'm not worth it." Yes, he wasn't worth it. He was paranoid, narrow-minded, stubborn, and unscrupulous. He was a terrible liar. But I truly loved him for 7 years. Time was up. Before he was taken away by the guards, he said to me, "Don't forget me." I turned around silently and didn't look back at him one last time. "I will hate you for the rest of my life," I said in my heart.